Now, though, something different. Is it time to renationalise the railways? The Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Haigh says that Labour will do just that if they win the next general election. She says that the party would bring the railways into public ownership as private contracts expire, meaning that operators would be in public ownership within 5 years. But critics say that it could cost the taxpayer a small fortune. So we want to hear from you. Do you remember the days with state-run railways pre-1997? Were they a total shambles, or actually a lot better than they are nowadays? 0207 862 2222 for your thoughts on this, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. Georgie, what do you reckon? You're not old enough to properly remember state-run railways.
No, but something needs to be done, doesn't it? It's an absolute embarrassment. You know, I actually don't have a car, and I use trains a lot, and just the cancellations, the way it impacts my work. I often don't get home to put my kid to bed. You know, I really feel like I'm at breaking point with it. And there's also just a general acceptance now that when you turn up, you know, to the train station, either it's cancelled or you're going to be running late, which I just think is unacceptable. With that, prices are going up, fares are really expensive. Just the whole thing needs to be changed, and I think this is quite a good solution. Listen, I don't think it's going to be a silver bullet. It won't stop the strikes. It will be expensive in places.
Do you think the strikes would have been dealt with quicker if it had been nationalised?
I don't know. I mean, look at the nurses' strikes. It doesn't scream that.
Well, then, when you look at some of the other industries, education, the NHS, do we trust the government to take this under
I wanted to ask Georgie, please tell me one industry that has benefited from nationalisation.
Well, I guess we haven't sort of gone back through nationalising. So I guess the water industry would benefit from it.
No, one industry that there has been that was good when it was nationalised. Because I can't think of any.
Are we too quick to criticise when the government takes control of something?
Listen, there's definitely efficiencies that can happen if the government's running the whole of the railway service. So and also at the moment, what you've got to realise is that the railway services are really heavily subsidised. So we're already, as a taxpayer, paying a huge amount of money to these train operators. These train operators are predominantly owned by other state-owned companies. So we're and they're getting you know the shareholders are getting payout. So there's something that's going wrong in that loop.
Isn't it fair to say that the railways should benefit if profits were putting back into the system rather than given to bosses and shareholders? As in, if you own a company, you care about profits. If you work for a government, you care about the people. That's the idea, isn't it?
That's the idea, but then you look at competition, and isn't competition healthy? If you're not,
it is, but this is a natural monopoly.
There's no competition there.
At the moment, there's competition, and
not really. Not when you actually really drill down to it. If you look at it, it's sort of looking at, you know, actually as a consumer turning up, being, you know, if I'm going to Birmingham, what sort of number of trains have I got to be able to take there?
Well, in the tendering process, there's competition, isn't
there? Yeah, but not many. If you actually look at how many people go out to tenders, sometimes it's just one company applying to that.
Okay. If you look, history has shown that when the railways were nationalised, it was appalling. They were old-fashioned, unreliable. At least now there's been huge investment in the stations, in the carriages. The problem is surely the strikes, isn't it? Isn't the fact that the unions need to be dealt with? And if you nationalise them, it's going to, and you know, if we have a Labour government winning the next election, the problems are going to be even worse because the unions are actually going to be controlling the railways. That's the reality of the situation. So I think competition is good. I think that if we sort the strikes out, everything within the railways is good. The fare increases are capped. And there's one point I'd like to make. If we nationalise, there's one train company alone that will have £1 billion hit. OK, now you might not feel a great deal of sympathy with that, but you imagine the tax that £1 billion generates that's immediately taken out of the system. So I think it will end up costing the taxpayer an awful lot more, unfortunately for an awful lot less.
Nick has a point with the unions in the sense that could it be if Labour gets in the next general election, actually when it comes to the railways we could have the tail wagging the dog rather than the dog wagging the tail?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the solution is to that. I don't know how the government will get around that because, as I said, they clearly haven't handled, you know, general strikes across other industries very well. So I feel, as I said, I don't think this is a silver bullet, but I think it would help some of the problems that we currently have. And also I like Labour's approach to it, which is they're basically saying, let's just let the contracts expire, and they're sort of coming up over the next 5 years. So that means we don't have to pay compensation. It also means that it will happen gradually. so they won't suddenly be, left with this whole network, and they can sort of work it out as they go. You've also got to bear in mind that, there's already 7 operators that are nationalised, and if you look at the stats of them, from them being nationalised over the past sort of 3 or 4 years, they are more efficient. There are less cancellations.
Well, we could look at Scotland, and we could look at ScotRail, and we could look at the fact that the prices have gone up
massively, 8%,
upwards of 8%.
8%.
I mean, they're going to go up, I think, in England about 4%.
Yeah, 4 point
but double in Scotland,
yeah.
and that's not going to be good news for people.
No, exactly. It isn't. The fares will continue to go up. The unions will run the railways, and I think it'll be, as it has been before, a very inefficient system and a very expensive system. The taxpayer will end up with the bill.
But maybe the taxpayer is already ending up with the bill.
Maybe we just
more
have to be more honest with ourselves and say, look, we're going to have to pay more for rail travel if we want the rail travel service that we are expecting, something that runs on time, something that's convenient, and actually that's going to happen whether we have it nationalised or privatised.
I think we just need to sort the unions out. We just need.
And how do you?
Yeah, what do you propose?
I would sort the unions out, and I know you'll recall in horror, but I would actually, we have I would ban striking. I would have a system like an appeal system with ultimately at the top level a binding decision which is legally binding, and that's what you're getting, and that's what everyone has to comply with. So they're not guidelines.
So you wouldn't allow people to go on strike?
No. Like at the moment we have emergency services that are not allowed to strike, the police aren't allowed to strike, the army aren't allowed to strike. When you think how much this is, the country's being held to ransom in the most appalling way. It's continued for 20 months, and it's the public who are suffering, and ultimately that's costing a fortune. So we just need to sort them out. They are disruptive.
I'm losing sympathy with the strike. It does get to the point where you think enough is enough.
OK, we've got some social messages coming through. Carol on Facebook says renationalisation is overdue. Everything Jeremy Corbyn and Labour put in their 2017 manifesto is now shown to be absolutely necessary, in my opinion. Not in next, though, it would seem, with the exasperated size.
Louise has made this announcement yesterday, and it's typical of Labour. We're going to nationalise the railways, but what are the plans? And I'm going to tell you what the minutiae is in 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks, I'll give you the details. How we're going to save money, how we're going to do this. 2 or 3 weeks, she said, I'll let you know what those are going to be. She's not told us now.
OK, well,
okay.
She's given us a bit of an idea of what she's doing.
Surely, if you're going to announce something, you say, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it. This is how it's going to work.
No one in government actually does that, do they? I don't think you can just hold that against Labour.
OK, we've got another message on Twitter here, X, Dan, who says, to anybody under the age of 55, the British rail trains were dirty, threadbare and invariably late, just saying. A lot of people complained about the sandwiches too. That seems to come up. I'm shocked and stunned that it hasn't on social media already. Were they
just really bad quality?
I have no idea. I've never been given any. Were they dry? What's going on?
Was only white bread available.
Oh, maybe that was the problem then. No sourdough. Sarah from Liverpool, what's your thoughts on this? Do you think that we should renationalise the railways, and if so, why?
Morning, Storm. Morning, panel. Well, I have mixed feelings about it because I can remember what it was like with British Rail, both intercity and local. And to say that Merseyrail, before it got sorted out by a Dutch firm, was a joke would be an understatement. It was known to the locals as Misery Rail. The trains didn't run on time. If you were lucky, if you got them, and it was just an absolute joke. And as for intercity, as anyone can remember, they were either cancelled or late, and anyone can remember that there used to be rail crashes quite regularly. Pretty much there'd be one a year at the least, especially in the 80s, and the last one I can remember was the Clapham crash.
Yeah.
So you're saying that safety wouldn't be an argument for renationalisation then?
Well, Network Rail is actually run by the government. It was taken over. I think it was Paddington or Clapham. It was after one of the big crashes. Mm-hmm. And what most people don't realise is we still own our railways.
Yes.
It's just that the lines are licensed out to these companies to run them.
Yeah.
However, what most people don't think is they're only on a 5-year contract. These companies take money out. They don't invest in because they're only on a short contract. Mm-hmm. So what we should do is take a look at what goes on in Switzerland, because they've got a similar system. And they've said, right, you want to run this particular line or these lines, you've got to invest in them for 30 years.
Nick would say that they have invested.
Money out, and it works.
Sarah, they've actually invested. 5,700 new carriages, 6,400 more services a week, and 180 station improvements. It's about nearly £1 billion of investment. So when you're saying there's been no investment, that actually is inaccurate.
Yeah, but you're
I didn't
saying
say there was no investment. I said the companies choose not to invest as much as they should.
Yeah.
Okay, but Sarah, you said that they're taking the money out, but you've said two things here. You said that, hold on, you said that when they were nationalised, they were awful, particularly in the Liverpool area, but we should still renationalise them because...
I didn't say renationalise. I said the government already own.
So you think that they should force the companies to...
longer leases.
They should force the companies to put more money back in than they already... So maybe 2 billion.
That's it.
Okay. Sarah, that might be a point. That might be a different way of doing things.
I just don't think there should be payouts to the shareholders if they're getting subsidised by the government, which is what's happening at the moment, because they're not making any profit. No rail company's making any profit. The government is subsidising it and they're getting profit, and from that profit, that's then going to the shareholders. So there's something amiss in the way that's working at the moment.
David from Derby, what's your view on this?
We should renationalise the railway system completely, as soon as possible.
OK, but what about the sandwiches?
What's wrong with the sandwiches?
Well, I don't know. Apparently, when they were nationalised, it was terrible. But you've just heard from Sarah that when they were nationalised, I mean, I don't particularly remember, but apparently they were often late. There was issues with crashes. You know, it wasn't the sort of... It's not the silver bullet, as Georgie says, that you might expect. Filthy, threadbare, someone says on X.
Right. Unfortunately, people have this idea that a nationalised railway system doesn't work. It's filthy. The sandwiches are horrible. I joined the army. Went to work in Germany. German railway system, absolutely on time, clean.
Different government, different mentality, different people.
Different mentality.
I don't know whether we can put...
Well, it's a different investment. They're investing far more than we do in this country. That's one of the problems. I
mean, David, if we look, it's a comment Nick made. I'm going to put it to you. If you look at all the other industries that the government are in charge of, you look at the NHS, look at our education system. We've got walls crumbling down in schools. You're going to trust the government then with the railways too?
Of course.
Right.
I do not trust private companies to do anything. Anything to do with the public sector, you should take out all the private companies, because all they're there for is to make profit, nothing else.
But if they're there to make profit, then they're more efficient potentially?
Not really.
OK, you're not convinced. You want them renationalised. Erica from Northumberland, do you agree with David?
No, I don't. We definitely shouldn't renationalise. And the gentleman in the black shirt,
Nick.
He is absolutely dead right. He should be our next Prime Minister.
Nick, ever considered the job?
Erica, don't give him any ideas.
No, and he's also right with the unions. They're far too strong. They're putting this country on their knees.
Okay.
And definitely there should be a stop to all strikes.
But Erica, so we've got a terrible railway system at the moment, lots of people suffering from delays, lots of, the prices are sky high. What do we do to try and mitigate that? If you're not going to renationalise, but we need to do something to improve the railways, what is the middle ground?
Well, stop all the strikes. I mean, that must have cost a fortune. And they've lost a lot of money, an awful lot of money.
So you'd sort out the unions then, that would be your main focus?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I worked and I was always in the union, but I've never striked. So they've got to stop striking.
Got you, Erica. Thank you very much for your call.
Bring back Maggie.
Bring back Maggie. Well, that's going to be difficult. Chris from Hampshire, what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, hello, Storm. Yes, I definitely think we should never renationalise the railway because they were dreadful. When I was a youngster, I used to have to go and visit my mother over in Havant, and that was a train journey of around 20 miles. However, every Saturday, they would regularly get cancelled, and then you'd have rail replacement service. Now, because we were on bikes, there was me and my brothers, we couldn't take the bikes on them, so we didn't have to ride all the way home, and that happened quite regularly.
Oh, Chris.
So, they were dreadful.
But why then, when we look at other countries, one of our previous callers brought it up, why when we look at somewhere like Germany and how wonderful their rail system is and it's nationalised, why can't ours be the same? Why can't we do something similar? It seems impossible for us.
I just think that we've had too many people trying to interfere with the railways over many years, trying to rationalise, and they've made a total mess of it. It's not through lack of money. A lot of money was wasted. I mean, we just need somebody who knows what they're doing.
I'm going to have to let you go because the signal's really bad, but I think we take your point. We understand what you're saying. It sounds like you had a terrible experience with the National Railways. William from Middlesex, what's your thoughts on this? Do we need to renationalise or keep them private and just put more legislation in place? Do we need to sort out the unions? There's a few options.
There's definitely a few options, but I think the main thing is that even if you nationalise it, that money's got to come from somewhere, which realistically, as we're seeing in that we don't seem to have a lot to do to give all these pay rises and stuff. And I'm not saying that they can't be, but, going into an election year, is there going to be a major change in nationalising the railway? And they're going to have to put up prices regardless. And that, like, as you said, in Europe, and that, yes, the train is technically better, but there's a hell of a lot of more investment than what we've put in, and then we're spending billions on HS2, which isn't going to run the whole way now.
So William, I'm just trying to summarise what you're saying there. Are you basically saying either way you look at it, nothing is going to happen and we're going to pay more for it?
And realistically, yeah. And I don't see there's going to be much more improvement from nationalising the private sector, because you said some private companies have gone bust, some private companies haven't gone bust. So, it's going to cost, depending on which one is nationalised, or even if you nationalise all of them, some will work better than others because some of the routes are more popular than others.
William, we're running out of time on this whole discussion, but it's a pretty pessimistic way to finish the chat.
It's the unions.
Just come back at you, William. Like there are efficiencies that can happen if we nationalise the whole thing. So there are definite advantages from doing that would cost, to save money and
you can't trust the government to run a major industry in this country. It just doesn't work. It never has historically, and it won't now. We'll look at the national health at the moment.
But we can't seem to trust private companies.
No, we need
exactly.
Well,
there has to be some solution.
If the unions were brought to heel, then the companies will be running fine.
But it's not the unions that are the problem with the water companies.
No. That's a different argument. That's a completely different argument, because the law is defective in terms of the water companies. There's this loophole about whether they need to regulate the sewage or whether actually they should be paid extra for that. So it's a completely different argument. But
a lot of people would say that should be renationalised too. Maybe a debate for another day. Certainly not at this time anyway. We've run out of time.